Hello, this is lesson two, and before we get into the material covered on this course, chess material, allow me first to tell you another one of my bedtime stories. I was born in 1975 in a small, by Soviet standards, town of Tuapse. It's on the Black Sea, very south of Russia, nearby Sochi. Um, I think we had roughly about 50,000 inhabitants, and of course, by Soviet standards, it was quite a provincial place. And sometime around 5 years old, when I was five, my father introduced me to the game of chess. Actually, didn't have any bad intentions. I mean, he never dreamed about me becoming a professional chess player. But since chess was a very popular game at that time in Soviet Union, and well, I would say it was part of the culture in our country at that time. So as parents would introduce kids to music, arts, and okay, chess was, so to say, part of this package. Um, and I remember that I got captivated very quickly with the game of chess. I mean, I really liked it a lot from the beginning, and very soon I asked my father to get me some maybe chess book, or at least to learn something about the game, some theory of the game. And in our provincial town, it was quite difficult actually to get the chess books. Well, you should remember, especially for the young generation of the listeners of this course, that at that time there was no internet. Hard to imagine, but it was the case, and there were no computers, and well, there was not. It was quite difficult to get information. I mean, we just had a TV, and I remember there were only two national programs. Well, not much to watch on it also at that time, in Soviet times. Um, so actually obtaining any information was very difficult. I mean, in general at that time, and in Soviet Union especially, and well, in chess in particular. So my father went to this to our local bookstore, and uh, I think that there was only one decent, or maybe even the only one book which was there, was a book of the best game collection of the best games of Anatoly Karpov, who was at that time the current world champion, and a very kind of big prominent figure in the Soviet Union in general. And yes, so that was my first real serious chess book, and it's very important also to add that we didn't really have any strong chess players back then in Tuapse, in my native town. I think that so I didn't really have a chance to get some really high quality chess lessons. Uh, I think the strongest chess player we had back then was roughly 2100 level of playing strengths. Well, I can say, just for your understanding, that I think I became the top set champion among men already at the age of 9. So it was not a chess mech, so to say. So what I mean is that actually a good chess book was basically the only reliable source of, of information, quality in chess information I could get back then. That's why once I received this book as a present from my father, I've immediately started to, with a lot of enthusiasm, to analyze those games, day and night, just on my own, without any trainers. So I don't know how much. I'm not sure that I understood all those nuances and of Karpov's game, and of his style. Okay, I was just 5-6 years old and just analyzing those games on my own. Of course, they were commented, but still, probably, I could only understand, well, very minor part of his, of what I could get from this book nowadays. But in any case, the most important is that it's kind of developed my taste of positional chess, of this typical Karpovian style, prophylactics, nuances of endgame technique, and in general, I think that it, in a way, it was a very important stone, which finally built my style, which I consider is more positional, even though, of course, it was changing during years, and sometimes I would play more aggressively, sometimes I would. Some years when my style was purely positional, and I enjoyed playing a lot of endgames. But all in all, I think this Karpov base was very important, so to say. Based of this, I think this is the base of my play, and probably just because of this fact that accidentally, Karpov Best Games collection was my first book, which I studied seriously. And of course, his games made a very big effect on me, because, well, it just made me understand how important is this part of a chess game. Because, as a kid, usually you tend to think more about combinations, attacks, and then only later on you start to get more positional, you start to pay a lot of attention to positional aspects of the game of chess. And I, as a kid, was I was always happy to change queens and to play some endgame or some positional, some very, so to say, boring positional game. Yeah, for me it was not boring at all, and I kind of enjoyed it, and still, by the way, I do enjoy it. So what is so special about Karpov's style, and why do I recommend everyone who wants to improve his positional skills? Well, first of all, to study his games. Well, he was a very instructive positional player. I mean, I would say a model, of a positional chess player. He had a very powerful, natural kind of sense, of the position, which would allow him to notice very, the smallest nuances of a given position on the board, and to anticipate actually the development of events, and to see, a lot of potential ideas of his opponents, and he was very good at preventing the opponents from executing their plans long in advance. He was, very, very careful player, so to say. So a player with very natural, very powerful, natural, and also developed, of course, later on, kind of prophylactic thinking. And so his specialty, I would say, was to deprive his opponents from any counterplay, any active plan, and only then, very often, he would start to do something active on his own. Yeah, that was his specialty. Of course, it's very difficult manage. I mean, yeah, there is a certain magic in his play because even if you try hard, sometimes it's quite difficult to stop all your opponent's counterplay. But yeah, it was happening very often in his games, at least in his best games. And I've noticed another very important feature of his play, which I would like to share with you, and you will see in the examples I'm going to give you, you will see a large amount of such moves. For myself, I call it multifunctional moves. What do I mean by this? Well, usually when you play a game of chess, you have a choice on each move. Well, very often, yeah, you have a choice between two different options. I mean, strategically, whether you try to continue your own plan, some active plan, improving your position, whether you try to prevent your opponent's play. Yeah. So, and quite often during a game, it's kind of a mixture. Yeah, you try to do two moves to prevent your opponent's counterplay, then another 1-2 moves to start your own play, and the same goes for your opponent. So it's a kind of fair, equal battle. But Karpov, was a kind of magician, master of those multifunctional moves. So, which means that with one move, he would somehow manage to solve both tasks. So his moves very often would prevent his opponent's active plan or his opponent's counterplay, and at the same time, those moves would be a part of his own plan. So it would also improve his own position. And of course, like this, you are much faster than your opponent always. I don't know. I mean, we are all from time to time top players. We have such moves in our pockets, but there was some kind of magic in Karpov's game. How often and how many such moves he was playing, during his games. This particular thing, was really always fascinating me in his games. Yeah. So I would like to show you now a couple of examples where you will see lots of such moves, and in general, those two games which made a big impression on me. I remember when I was a kid, when he, in his best fashion, he manages to outplay his opponents. Actually, without giving them any real chance to get counterplay, and very often with the help of those multifunctional moves. And yes, you get sometimes a feeling when you see Karpov's games, those two and many others when he was at his best, that these feelings of, I guess, his opponents were kind of frustrated, very often after the games with Anatoly, because it looks like the position is more or less equal at the beginning, at some point in the middle game, and then nothing. They don't really make mistakes, and Karpov doesn't really try to do something really aggressive. So everybody's trying to move around, so to say, to improve their position. And after 10 moves, Karpov is close to winning. And this kind of magic that was always something which fascinated me. And in general, I really enjoy this kind of chess when you manage to outplay your opponent in such a way that you need to analyze the game very deeply to understand what was a mistake. I mean, because most of the time it's quite obvious, that the mistake was this was a wrong move, that was a wrong move. But in Karpov games, it's not that obvious at all where the opponents made mistakes. And those two examples I'm going to present you now, I think, are very clear, and I think you will see what I mean when we go through those two games. So this is the first example, which made quite a big impression on me. Karpov is playing white against Gennady Kuzmin, a very strong Ukrainian grandmaster. It was played in 1973. Anatoly Karpov was, I think, just 22 at that time. And it was played in Leningrad interzonal tournament. Actually, that was this cycle when he became the world champion at the end of it. So he won this interzonal. Then he beat in quarterfinal a very strong, a top grandmaster Lev Polugaevsky at that time. Then in the semifinal candidate match, he managed to beat very convincingly Boris Spassky, who was just world champion before. So Boris lost a couple of years ago his match to Bobby Fischer. And then in the finals, Karpov managed to beat Korchnoi. Then finally, as we all know, unfortunately, this match Fischer-Karpov never took place. But I think it wouldn't be easy for Fischer. Of course, I still consider Fischer as a favorite in this match, but Karpov was already extremely strong, and very young, very energetic, and probably the style which was quite unusual maybe for Fischer. And we shouldn't forget that Fischer beat Spassky, with I think +4 in the match, but basically Karpov beat him +3 if I remember well also. So the match would be very, very interesting, maybe one of the most interesting in the matches in the history of chess which never took place. But anyway, it is as it is. So Karpov became world champion, to many people's surprise, because he was really extremely young yet. Just 2 years after, but you can see by this game that it was not an accident. So think about this position. It's white to play, and try to have a kind of general overview of the position. Try to understand what are the pluses and minuses of each side, what are the plans for both players, and finally, what is the best move now in this particular position. So let's analyze this situation strategically. Equal material, pawn structure. Yes, black has an isolated pawn on d5, but I wouldn't say that in this particular position it's such a weakness, because it's not this typical isolated pawn which is going to be attacked soon. You see that black has 2 rooks on d line. White is not really planning to have any significant chance of putting pressure on the d5 pawn. So I wouldn't say that is anything significant in this particular position, a significant factor of the position. I would rather say that probably I actually like the white pawn structure. I like this f2, g3 and f4 pawn structure. I think that if white would have a very typical, more typical situation when white has a pawn on h2, then probably black will be doing more or less okay, pretty fine, because of the e5 square. So then with a pawn on h2, black can at some point first moving a pawn on h6, let's say, and then having this knight e5, and it's a very nice square for the knight, potentially. But with a pawn on f4, it controls this e5 square, and also it leaves the knight on g6 kind of out of play a bit. So I think, to me, that small nuance is pretty much in white's favor, that this double pawns on f line. So what is white going to do next? In general, to improve his position. So improving his position, I don't see how he can at the moment improve his pawn structure, which is pretty good. So probably he will start to activate his pieces. The most logical way is, I guess, maneuvering the knight via d2 to f3. That's very logical. The knight is not doing much on b3, and obviously one day it should go to f3. Then doubling rooks on e-line, like rook e2, rook a1 looks logical. And then we see, yeah, so this is the plan for the next coming moves. Probably it will be followed with a certain play on the king side. So now let's see what is black's next. This is actually, then when you ask this question, and yeah, if we if we remember the old Greeks, the Plato, I think it was him who used to say that the right answer is the right question is half of the right answer. Yeah, so it's very important to set the right questions to yourself, and of course in chess, when you think about your move, well, the most important is to ask what is a plan or what is a threat of your opponent. I will be talking a lot about it during next lessons of this course in detail. But for now, if we ask this question, well, it's pretty clear. Yeah, black wants to play d4. In fact, all his pieces are set exactly to serve this goal. His both rooks on d line, so to say, make sense only if black manages to play d4. Yeah, and that's almost the only kind of logical, natural way of for black to proceed. And then if white can always, of course, take on d4 with a knight, with massive exchanges, knight takes d4, cd4, but that would probably lead to an equal position and draw. So before improving his position, Karpov, of course, that is for him a very simple task. I mean, not too difficult for such a incredibly, refined prophylactic player to see that by playing a3, a very strong move, he basically stops d4 forever, practically forever. And that is a key move actually in the whole game. So of course now, let's say if black plays d4, white always plays c4. And a3, why a3? Because white needs to protect the b4 square in order to stop knight b4, knight takes d3 plan. Yeah, and now c5 is a threat. Let's say queen c7, and black doesn't have counterplay anymore. Yeah. Now, for example, knight c5. Of course, knight d2 is also possible, but here you can go via c5, knight f8. Let's say b4. And we see that this poor black rooks, they're just looking at this d4 pawn and in fact becoming very passive. Actually, black would be probably extremely happy to remove his pawn from d4, because then he would have a certain play on d line and knight can jump to d4 with some threats, But white's bishop will never move away from d3, not at least for the next coming several moves. And black is left without any counterplay, really. So after a3, well, black had a difficult choice now. So d4, he understood that it's not possible on the next move, and probably on the never ever in future. So his main plan is not working anymore. I think he should have probably played knight f8 in a very solid manner. Of course, white has a very comfortable game now because he can do almost anything he wants. So I guess he's going to do knight d2, play knight d2, h6, knight f3. Black should probably go queen c7, rook e2. Again, d4, always c4. I mean, no counterplay for black. But maybe by playing rook e6, of course, black is slightly worse, a passive position, but still very solid. I mean, still not easy to convert white's advantage. Yeah, I mean, it's probably with accurate defense, black should be able to make a draw. But yeah, it will not be simple, and it's a long passive defense. And I guess Gennady Kuzmin, he didn't want, especially probably against Karpov, who was young, but already everybody understood how good is he in positional play, in this slowly pressing the opponent. So he wanted to create some counterplay, and he went h5. Again, objectively, it is probably not the correct move, but very understandable. And even if it's a mistake, not an obvious mistake. But from now on, Karpov is just there is an impression that he wins the game now, like without a chance, and Black is not having a single chance anymore, even if the position looks still perfectly fine for Black, more or less. But that is also what the mystery of Karpov, of his style of play, that he would often win games as if he was winning from the move one. Yeah, I mean, in seemingly equal position or close to equal, he would just slowly playing accurate, strong moves, he would just win a game, and as if the opponent didn't make a single mistake. Yeah, and that is one of those examples. King g2, h4. Of course, that is Black's plan, is trying to get maybe create some potential play on the h line. Rook e2, very, very important, also very typical for Karpov, this precision, because of course I was wondering when checking already now with the computer this game, I was wondering why not knight d2. This looks much more logical, first to transfer the knight to f3, and then we see probably doubling the rooks, because that is obviously White's plan. And then I understood, actually with the help of the computer, that, and I'm sure that is why Karpov played rook e2 first, that after knight d2, computer shows that there is knight a5 resource. Actually not an easy resource to see, and easy to miss if you are playing White, because knight d2 is a move you kind of play automatically. Yeah, but after knight a5, situation is quite acceptable for Black, because he wants to get knight c4, queen c6, and what is the most important, after knight f3, he is just in time after hg, let's say fg, knight c4, to create his counterplay. The knight maneuvers the knight, is threatening knight e3 check, b2 is hanging, and Black is already doing fine here. So yeah, you see how much Karpov sees, I mean, when he plays chess. So rook e2, then I understood why rook e2, why he first wants to double on e line, because now if knight a5, White has knight d4, and knight is going to f5. Knight on d4 is much more active, and according to computer, Black's position is pretty bad here already. So you see, it's not only the correct plan, yeah, it's not only prophylactics, but also those nuances which I was always very impressed, especially as a kid, how careful Karpov was about his opponent's threats or counterplay or even plans. Yeah, I mean, because rook e2 is very delicate. Yeah, most of players, I'm sure, including myself, would have played knight d2 very quickly because it's very logical. Yeah, but Anatoly, he sees everything. He sees all potential ideas for his opponent, and he prevents them all the time. And that is what made him, a very instructive player to study. And if you want to be a master in positional chess. So knight f8, knight d2. So you see, now he can do it already, knight d2, because after knight a5, knight f3, let's say, the thing after hg, computer says that there is rook h1, it's also very strong, but even fg, knight c4, rook e1. So now White protects, he's in time to double rooks, to defend the b2 pawn, e3 square, and it's pretty bad for Black here. So knight d2, rook h6, knight f3, hg, fg, knight d7, rook a, e1. Also, what was a very strong point of Karpov also, that he was, so to say, very strong in this short tactics, so to say, because that is I would say even the core of positional play is to see this kind of small tactics which helps your plans. For example, rook e1, it's very important to see if you play rook e1 that after knight f6 you have g4. But as you know, strong players were teaching me when I was a kid, that when you play well, when you play correctly, all tactics works for you. Yeah, that is, and when your position is good, usually tactics works in your favor if you see it. So that is this kind of small tactics which is working in white's favor, and quite important that white has g4 in this position, because of course knight takes g4 is rook e8, white will be mating simply black, and otherwise g5 is a threat, and black has to give up pawn with knight e4 and okay, without any compensation. So rook a1, king f8, and now even if Karpov objectively haven't played the best move in this position, but I still like the move. I still like it if you want aesthetically, and also I like it because it's very consistent. I mean, it is in this prophylactic kind of fashion. Yeah, he plays this particular game, and in general, he was playing chess in general, because of course computer finds a tricky way which is even stronger, playing b4 here. And for instance, I'm sure that Anatoly was not happy about knight f6, because already after g4, knight takes g4, there is no mate on e8. Yeah, but computer finds b5, knight a5, queen a4. Not so easy to understand that it's how strong it is, but it is really strong, because white wants queen b4 check, and he says that white is basically winning here. Of course, after b4, black can try to play a6 or something, but then b4 would be a very powerful move, stopping knight c5. Anyways, this is a tactical kind of opportunity. Of course, that was sometimes, and you will see it in the next example also, Anatoly would be sometimes missing this tactical opportunity, because he was so much into his plan, that and in any way what he did in this game and in the next game I'm going to present you was good enough, was very good. Sometimes I would say that he could have win some games quicker, but from the educational point of view, and if you want from aesthetical point of view, I like more how he played, because again, we are not computers. Sometimes this kind of strange ideas on the other side of the board, like before b5, we can always miss. But what is important that we don't miss the general plan in the game. And then, so he played g4. This is clearly the second best move, and in a human way, it's a very powerful move, because actually it is this kind of active prophylactics, if you want. So of course the main idea is not only, of course, to start some action on the on the king side, like g5 and so on, but of course the main idea is to stop knight f6, which is not possible now because of g5. And for a knight c5 also seems to be pretty bad, because g5, rook e6, and now b4, knight takes d3, queen takes d3, and well, it's quite obvious that it's, in fact, black wanted to create some counterplay with this h5, h4, but finally it's white who is having a very powerful attack. He wants to play queen h7, and black's position is pretty bad here as well. So g4, and g4 is one of those fascinating, multifunctional moves, as I call it, which you can find in big amount in Karpov games. So it is prophylactics and at the same time improving the position. So having, delivering two tasks at the same time. And that is, the Karpov was really the unique player who had so many moves like this in his best games. So g4, queen c7, attacking the pawn on f4, g5, rook h8, king g3. Again, I would say a very strong multifunctional move. From one point of view, protecting, of course, the pawn on f4. From other point of view, white starts a direct attack with rook h2. Yeah, so now he is opening up the second rank to be able to attack on the flank. Knight c5. Well, here Anatoly, he played very well, and he won the game very convincingly. Again, the same story. He could have won it in a more direct and tactical way, but it's not rook h2 actually was winning according to computer, because after rook takes h2, queen takes h2, of course you cannot take on d3 because of queen h8 mate, and I'm sure that Karpov saw, but I think probably he was not so sure about knight e6 move. At least it doesn't look so clear, because now queen h8 check, king e7, and f4 pawn is hanging, but computer is brave enough to play king g4. Very nice, and very nice move actually, because king is very safe. White king on g4 is much safer than black opponent on f8. And according to computer, this is just winning for white. But anyways, again, Karpov would sometimes maybe get too excited about his style of playing very prophylactic positionally, and I mean, it was good enough, so I cannot say it's a mistake, but sometimes he would miss something more tactical, on the way. But anyway, what he played was very good. It's anyway also good enough to win. Bishop f5, and you never know, maybe it's a move 30, maybe he was in a small time trouble already, so or maybe he just didn't want to bother calculating some sharp variations when he sees a very clear positional way to get a winning position, and so bishop f5 is very good also. G6, so also a prophylactic move, of course. He is stopping knight e6. G6, because white wants to play b4, and also he is threatening rook h2. G6 seems to be the only move. b4. Now, what to do? Of course, gf is totally lost. B takes c5, and f5 pawn is hanging, and white is having a mating attack here. Same can be said about knight d7. Then simply bishop takes g6, and you don't even need to calculate variations here to understand that it's going to be mate after fg, queen takes g6. So Kuzmin had to play knight e4 check, bishop takes e4, d4, queen takes e4. Okay, white is basically pawn up and having a better position, having more active pieces, king g7, but still, and that is also very important, and for you to note that how accurate is Karpov. Is even in this position, which is basically winning, of course, but he is very accurate. He wants to prevent any possible, even theoretical kind of counterplay from his opponent, and so he's still alert. For example, rook h2 looks like a very logical move. Rook takes h2, knight takes h2, trying to go knight g4 and so on. But here, all of a sudden, after, let's say, king f8, followed by knight e7, let's say knight g4, knight e7, things are not so easy. Black knight can get to f5, and c3 pawn is hanging, so it's quite difficult to win this position with white. So he sees this potential idea of knight e7, potentially, let's say rook d7 maybe, then knight e7 or something, and then he's playing b5, a very accurate way to finish the game. Knight a5, queen e7. Again, you need a bit of calculation. Here it's not too difficult. I mean, after queen takes c3, rook e3, now the only square is b2, and now more than one move is winning. The simplest is rook e5, just to threatening queen f6 check, and white simply mates black here very, very quickly. So queen e7, which forces black to change queens. Queen takes e7, rook takes e7, and okay, rook is on the 7th rank. White is pawn up and a better position. So basically the game is over, and black cannot really get immediately his knight into the game, knight c4, because of knight d4 and threatening knight e6 check. So well, the only chance still to stay in the game for a short while, even if it wouldn't definitely change anything, I mean the outcome of the game, was to play rook c8, let's say rook e3, knight c4, rook d3, and well, threatening rook d7. Also all the pawns on the 7th rank are hanging, so no chance for black, but that was at least maybe a way to survive until move 40, until the time control. But Kuzmin played rook d3. Well, I understand he tries to pin and to get his knight to c4 to get some activity. Yeah, I guess after king g4, his idea was probably to play knight c4, and even if it's completely lost, but maybe somewhere knight d6, knight d5, you know, to try some chances. But here another, actually, yeah, this typical Karpovian simple move, but extremely efficient. This another multifunctional move, rook c7. I mean, I like it because it serves three very important goals. Yeah, first of all, protects the pawn on c3. Second, it stops knight c4, and third, it prepares rook e7, entering with another rook on you know, the 7th rank with a decisive effect. A very nice move, a very simple one, but a nice move in this sense. Yeah, how he manages so much to achieve so much with one particular move. Yeah, and that's it. Basically, game over. Knight b3. Okay, this is already, of course, agony. King g4, threatening knight e5. Rook f8, rook e7, and knight e5 comes next. Not even mentioning that all those pawns on the 7th rank are hanging, so Kuzmin resigned here. So for me, I remember as a kid, it was very impressive, this game. I mean, to see how in a seemingly equal, slightly better position, how he manages to win in a way not doing anything very special, but being extremely precise, stopping all the counterplay of the opponent. And it looks like black lost without actually making any significant mistake in this game. So one of those typical Karpov games when, you know, it seems that you can do it. Everything is understandable, is simple in brackets, yeah, but no one else than Karpov could have done it in such an efficient way. So a very educational game. But the second one I'm going to show you, it's, in my opinion, even better aesthetically. You know, I would say that I will explain you why, but the other game was really, I mean, made a huge impression on me, and it's a really kind of positional prophylactic masterpiece, classics, I would say, of positional play. So I'm going to present it to you right now. And this is a position from the game Karpov-Timman, Montreal 1979. That was a time when probably Karpov was at his best, winning most of the tournaments he was playing. And Jan Timman, his opponent, is a top 10 player, one of the main challengers for the world title, so a very serious opposition this time. But you will see how easily Karpov managed to outplay and to actually, I would even say, destroy his opponent in this game with his unique prophylactic positional style. So let's think about this position. I offer you to meditate a bit about it. You know, in general, there is no tactics really, but just try to understand what are the main characteristics of this position, what are the potential plans for both sides, and come up with a move. It's white to play, so come up with the best move according to you. I think white has a very comfortable position. Of course, he has a certain space advantage, a very typical situation for the Pirc opening, where, black, like in King's Indian, black gives some space. Black is not directly fighting against the center, but he has certain counterplay. Mainly, his counterplay, Black's counterplay, is linked with ed4 and then knight c5, trying to get some play against the e4 pawn, and sometimes b5 b4 b5 a5. At times Black can try to manage d5 at some point. Yeah, so that is what Black wants to do theoretically. Yeah, of course not immediately. And White doesn't have to do much. He has a space advantage, and basically what is White's main plan is to prevent Black from doing all this, and then slowly the control on the center. I guess probably he will play one day on the king side, and in general he has strategically very sound position, so he doesn't need to hurry doing something quickly. So his main plan for the next coming moves is to prevent all possible counterplay from Black. And let's see how Karpov, how masterfully he is managing it in this game. So now g4 is a move, a very good move, quite typical, I would say, but still a very powerful move. Again, it's not really an aggressive move. I would even say it's more prophylactic move. His idea is that he wants to get, first of all White's pieces are very well placed. It's only the knight on e2 which is a bit not doing much. Yeah, the knight on e2. So he's playing g4 followed by knight g3. So the idea is that the knight starts to be, finds a better place on g3, is more active. Also, he's protecting just in case the e4 pawn. This motive in chess, I think it's called overprotection. So he's protecting the e4 pawn because he knows, he understands that it will be pretty much about the e4 pawn. Yeah, that Black will try to play ed4, knight c5 at some point, and so he's in advance, he's protecting once more the e4 pawn and just improving the position of his pieces. So rook a d8, knight g3, bishop c8. Very logical play from Black side. So he's, you see that he has this kind of, on d line, he has a certain, I would say, potential pressure with a rook against the queen. So one day d5 might come because the queen is on the d line, and it's not easy to find a good place for the queen, because it's a bit of a pity to play queen c1 here. Queen on d2 seems to be doing pretty well. So somewhere in the in the air there is ed4, d5, or d5 immediately, and try to find now the best move for White. Also try to think in the same prophylactic fashion. So what is the best prophylactic move here? f4. This is what Karpov played, and again it is multifunctional. In fact, it is a prophylactic move. It's also an aggressive and kind of a move which is improving the position, and White starts his own play, but the main goal of it is, in fact, is to prevent d5 forever. And you see the thing is that after, let's say, e takes f4, bishop takes f4, well, first of all, Black cannot play d5 just because the queen on c7 is hanging. But even if not, then whatever, if the queen would have been on c7, then after d5, White always has e5. So Black cannot open up the center after ef4, bishop f4. Same goes for e takes d4, bishop takes d4, and now again, if Black plays d5 here or one day later, then White always has e5, and with a big advantage, because Black needs to get d5 only. It works only if he managed to open up the d line or e line, to get some counterplay. So f4, in a way, it is a very powerful, again, multifunctional move, prophylactics, and also he starts his play on the king side. b5. Yeah, black doesn't have much plan. Yeah, I mean, if not d5, then he's trying to play b5. A3. Again, of course, Karpov is, for him, such moves are, very simple. Of course, he would never allow b4, because let's say if king h1, another prophylactic move, kind of useful move, and then all of a sudden, one small inaccuracy, and you can see how quickly black gets his counterplay. E takes d4, bishop takes d4, b4, very important to kick the knight from c3. Let's say knight e2, c5, bishop f2, bishop b7. And all of a sudden, black has, black is actually slightly better. He has a lot of pressure on the center. d5 is coming, and so one small inaccuracy, and black gets out fully. So of course a3, because knight on c3 is very important in this position. Again, protecting the pawn on e4 and stopping this before c5 idea. Yeah, also, which is one of the black's plan. Of course, yes, Timman, I think he was not happy with his position, because white's plan is quite simple. Yeah, he's going to start pushing pawns on the king side, so he needs to create some counterplay. He played b4, probably not a good move, but understandable. Yeah, understandable. He wants to get his knight. I don't know what I would advise instead. Let's say knight d7. I think it's a first choice of computer, but white can just play queen f2, and I think white is simply better here. I don't see much counterplay for black. So b4, at least a human decision, definitely. A b4, knight takes b4. You see, again, he wants to create some play, probably trying to play e d4, bishop d4, c5, followed by bishop b7, maybe d5. A very logical, actually, play. Now, for instance, if white is, again, just hurries a bit with f5, then after d5, the situation becomes very messy and unclear. Black starts to get, all his pieces into play, and maybe it's still in white's favor, but things are not easy. And of course, Karpov would never allow it. You already understand it. So knight c2. Again, now a very strong maneuver, of course, with a certain, tactical idea behind it, which is that after e d4, black is not in time to play c5. I will show it to you later. And what can you do now with black? Let's say if c5, now white is in time to take on e5. The problem is that cd4 is not working, because after ef6, d3, the knight on b4 is hanging, queen takes b4. So you see, it always has to be, the small tactics has to be checked and calculated very precisely. And that is why knight ce2 is a strong move, because of the knight on b4 is hanging in this line. And of course, d5, d5 is just pretty bad positionally, simply. So now black doesn't have any counterplay anymore in the center, and white will probably start his rook f1 and g5 and attack on the king side. So c5 is not an acceptable option. Then let's say if a5, then c3, knight a6, and the problem, black's problem now, let's say rook f1, that he can never ever get d5 at all, because after e d4, white will always take with a pawn on d4. Yeah, let's say e d4, c d4. Again, you see how useful is the knight on g3 protecting the pawn on e4. Yeah, so after rook f1, it's again c5 always can run to d5. Knight on a6 is out of play, and black's position is critical. White will just start probably pushing g5, f5. Start to direct attack on the king side. So e takes d4. That was what Timman played. Knight takes d4. And yeah, that is important why it all works, because c5 now doesn't work because of knight b5. Again, if you just have here black pawn on a6, maybe black's position will be perfectly acceptable. He will have c5. But it doesn't work, because c5, knight b5, queen b8, white can just take the pawn on d6, rook e6, e5, and He's just winning. So knight takes d4, a5 was played, c3, knight a6. And now try to find the best move for white. I think it's really fantastic move. Even if, again, I'll tell you what Karpov played is, well, I mean, I wouldn't say it's not the first line, but computer considers it like one of top 3 moves, more or less equally. He likes 3 moves, but I find it really fantastic move. I mean, just you can see this depth of Karpov, and it's aesthetically beautiful. Again, it's extremely multifunctional move. So try to think about it and find this move. So of course, white has several attractive options. For instance, there is tactics, knight takes c6, but you already know that Karpov he doesn't like to calculate when there is no reason to calculate. It was good, it gives white some advantage, but black's pieces starts to jump out a little bit, and situation can get out of control slightly. Let's say queen takes e6, e5, d5. I mean, don't misunderstand. Of course, Karpov saw it. I mean, for sure. Saw it. It's not that he missed this tactical idea, just that he probably thought that his position is good enough, to not to go into this probably prospector's, but not totally clear position. Bishop f6, f5. For example, bishop h4, bishop f2. Computer says that white is better. I fully agree with the computer. Yes, white is better, but you see that black pieces are a bit, getting out of their passive positions, and anything can happen. Yeah. So Karpov, as another idea is to play b4. Computer actually likes it a lot. A, b, c, b, bishop b7. Then his computer tries to play b5. He says that white is better. It is true, but again, it's not in Karpov style. Yeah, I mean, the move he played is really brilliant. He played queen c2, incredibly strong move, and also, I mean, so multifunctional. Yeah, because the idea is that first of all, he stops knight c5 with this move. He stops knight c5 because there is b4. So he overprotects the pawn on e4. You see, if queen would have been on d2, then black would have just taken on e4. So queen b4, and okay, after a, b, c, b, c6 pawn is hanging. Yeah, let's say knight e6, queen takes c6. Black simply losing a pawn. So then at the same time he stops d5. Because simply e5. With a queen on d2, maybe black would have some knight e4 move here. Knight takes e4, d takes e4, and then some pin on the d line. Yeah, if the queen would have been on d2. But he's playing queen c2 just in order after d5, e5 to, that after knight e4 the queen is not pinned, so white just simply takes the pawn. Yeah, and he's simply winning here. So queen c2, probably the best was for black now to play bishop b7. Bishop b7, I mean, okay, it's I'm pretty sure Karpov would have played bishop f2 here. Again, a very, very strong prophylactic move. But computer, for instance, says that, let's say, if Kasparov will be white here, I think he would have probably played the move which computer also likes, which is knight h5. But that is not Anatoly Karpov. That is Garry Kasparov, definitely. So the idea is that after gh there is e5 check, king g8, ef6, knight f5, and white has a very powerful attack. So after knight h5, white is also better. But I'm sure Anatoly would have do it in a different fashion. So Timon played bishop d7 instead. Okay, his idea is that he wants to play c5 and to cover the b5 square. Now, again, computer and Kasparov, I think, would have played objectively probably a stronger continuation. But then we will probably have less aesthetic pleasure from this game, because computer says that g5 is very direct and very strong. Here, with the idea, okay, if knight g8, then f5, and white's attack is very strong, and if hg, fg, knight g8, which doesn't seem so clear, because black gets some activity, the bishop can get to e5 one day, but computer finds this knight f5 blow, and he says that white is winning here, because he also, on top of everything, he has this queen f2, queen h4 threat. Again, even if it was objectively even stronger, but I really like Karpov way of playing it. Knight f3, another very powerful prophylactic move. So he stops again knight c5, because after knight c5, white has e5 and everything collapses. Let's say knight d5 is only move, because there is no d5 because of bishop takes c5. That is why knight f3 was played, to stop knight c5. So, and if knight d5, well, there are many good moves here. Probably the best is taken on c5, dc, knight h5. Now the knight is not hanging, and because there is a pin, and white is close to winning here as well. So knight f3, yes, and now with just making useful prophylactic moves, white totally outplayed the opponent, and actually black's position is simply lost already. I don't know what to do now with black, because he has no play, and white is already starting, to have g5 threats, f5, e5, and he is simply much better positionally. So rook e7 was played by Timman. Well, I don't know if it's such a useful move, but as they say, in a bad position, every move is bad. So rook e7, bishop f2. Again, typical Karpov. I really like it. I think I have a feeling that he was kind of enjoying his position, and maybe he even set a goal for him to win a game in a pure positional way, not without calculating maybe a single complicated line, not even trying to attack, just to win it slowly and positionally. Because a move like f5 again was of course very strong also. White is basically winning already here. But bishop f2, also again he's overprotecting this pawn on e4, just making a useful move, because he sees that black has no play, he just has no moves. And also after rook d8, now white has queen d3. Again, you see bishop f2 protecting the pawn on e4, because, for instance, if knight c5, what is important, why bishop is important on f2? Of course, bishop takes c5 is very strong, but also there is queen takes d6, and after queen takes d6, rook takes d6, knight takes e4. Because the bishop is on f2, white can just take on e4 and twice and take on d7 with just easy win here. Rook e4, rook takes d7. So bishop e8. I guess Timman was already in time trouble, and anyway the position is pretty bad. Queen d3. Queen d3. Now Anatoly noticed that the bishop is on a8, so now the rook on d8 is hanging in so there is no knight c5 again, because of bishop takes c5 and the rook is hanging. And the same goes for queen d3, knight b8. There is e5, with the bishop on d7, at least black would have, here black would have played d5, but here he cannot do it because of the rook on d8, and after knight d5, white can win in different way, but the simplest is e d6, rook e1, knight e1, and after queen d6 or rook d6, white simply wins the piece with c4 because of the pin on the d line. So queen d3, queen b7, and now again a typical Karpovian move. G5, of course, is still very strong, and white should have a crushing attack. But I like Karpov move, and something tells me he was enjoying himself this type of play. So he wanted to win in a pure positional prophylactic way. Rook a1, a strange move, easy to miss it because rook on d1 is so good. Yeah, it's but after rook a1, black simply cannot defend the pawn on a5, so he's simply losing a pawn without any compensation. Because of course queen takes b2, rook b1, white is just winning a queen. So after rook a1, okay, knight c7, rook takes a5. Actually, what is the funniest thing about this game is that rook takes f5 is the first move for white crossing the fourth rank, actually. And white is only maneuvering, in his on the second, third, and fourth rank. He got a totally winning position, and the first move crossing the equator of the chessboard is already taken the pawn with a completely winning position. This is quite rarely actually happening in chess, and especially when you are playing a very top player opponent. So you see how many prophylactic useful moves he had made. And I don't know, I think it's not only Anatoly Karpov who could win games by moving around pieces, on the third rank with white. That's his trademark. So rook takes a5, rook dd7. Well, black is completely lost because on top of the fact that he is just a pawn down, but he is much worse. Even if you add a pawn, let's say, for black on b5, he would still have a very, very bad position. So before knight e6, bishop e3, also, again, a typical Karpov. Of course, queen d2 is also good, but at least there is d5 and e5, knight e4. Even if takes knight d4, maybe black can try to get c5 at some point. So you see, I just want you to understand the way of thinking of Karpov, because in such a winning position, he's so careful just in case even he plays bishop e3. So he wants to prevent d5 even when it doesn't work, because d5 now e5, and after knight e4, white can simply take twice on e4. So bishop e3, it's, of course, I can imagine Timon's feeling in this position. Probably he was already in time trouble and absolutely terrible position. You want to resign here, but he still continued c5, f5, knight d8, very sad. Look at black's pieces. It's a horror movie. With rooks on d7, e7, knight d8, bishop e8, and now g5 is actually winning by force. Of course, hg, knight takes g5 check, king h8, e5, d5. Now bishop b7, rook d3, of course. But now queen can just go, let's say, to f1 and taking on c5. White is completely winning. But I'm pretty sure Karpov just wanted to finish it in a different style. So he just played b5, again cutting the knight, not letting the knight to get to c6, king h8, bishop f2. Well, you can see by this move how Anatoly was enjoying the position. So he wants to pack, to make a pack from the black's position, just to pack it nicely. Rook a4, queen c7, rook a4, queen b8, c4. The last move, just there is no d5, and of course it's a position Timon resigned. He couldn't look at it anymore. Of course, it looks like a position from a simultaneous exhibition, but don't forget that first of all, there was no obvious mistake from black, and second, there was a very top player playing black. So that is really, of course, the resistance maybe was not as good as in maybe some other games with top players, but I find it aesthetically beautiful, this game, how he manages, in fact, practically only playing on his side of the board. He manages just to crush completely a top player, purely positionally, playing pure positional prophylactic chess. A very instructive example, which shows how effective such play can be, and that you can win games. You don't have necessarily to do something. I mean, active. Yeah, sometimes you win games just by stopping your opponent from doing anything, and basically just by pure prophylactic way of playing. So that were the two games I wanted to present you, and as a in a way second introduction to the course. Later there will be many lessons. I will try to explain in details how do I choose a move. I will show you lots of my games, not as beautiful maybe as those two, but still maybe instructive. And for now, I think we had a long session, second lesson. I hope you enjoyed it. I hoped I managed to, so to say, to give you this taste of positional chess, of prophylactic chess, this taste which I got as a kid by studying games of Karpov. And see you soon on the lesson 3, where I will try to tell you my method, what is my method of choosing moves, and I think it will be also very instructive for you.